All right. So, as we dig into Ecclesiastes, here is the one thing you've got to remember going forward. You have got to be so careful not to take a single verse out of context. Solomon, who I believe is the author of the book, we'll get into that in just a little bit. Solomon is writing about his experiences, and he's being very, very open about it. He's just being totally straightforward. He's just telling you straight up, this is what I did. This is what I went through. These are the things that I acted on. These are the things I didn't act on. And he will make some statements like, yeah, we all know that you just go into the dust when you die. And people will look at that, and if they take it out of context, they're like, is Solomon teaching like there is no afterlife? And Solomon, that's not his point at all. You also see this on more of the scientific side where people, rightly so, will get caught up on, look at his accurate depiction of the water cycle. Look at how he talks about the sun cycle. Okay, that's not the point. Solomon in those verses is talking about the cycles of life and the fact that everything in life is a cycle. There'll also be verses where he talks about the earth being around forever. He's not saying the earth is around forever. What he's doing is he's making a comparison, and he's saying if you take, for instance, the age of man, and then you compare the age of man to something like, I don't know, how long the earth's been around. The earth has basically been around forever, and you have basically been around for nothing. So what do you think you're going to accomplish on the face of this planet? And that's the point. So he will make some extremely crazy statements sometimes, but some of those are either he's playing a mental game with you, other times he's just making a very cynical point that we all think at some point in our life, and he's just being very open about it, or he's building to some other case. Now, as you study out the life of Solomon, the other thing you're going to have to remember, and this kind of goes along with my first point, I like to compare it to keeping 3 points of contact. If you've ever worked on a ropes course, or if you've ever had to do any climbing or work at height, when you work at height, you have to keep multiple points of contact on whatever you're climbing. Because if, let's say, I'm climbing some staples, I know they're not approved anymore, but if I'm climbing some staples on the side of a tree, which are these big metal brackets, and I clip my lobster claws into that metal bracket, what's going to happen is, if for some reason that metal bracket decides to come loose, so either the pole is dried out or the tree is getting old or whatever the case is, and that staple comes loose, that is my sole point of contact. I'm going down with it, and I drop the entire length, and I hit the ground. So if you have multiple points of contact, you're clipping in here, you're holding on there, you've got your feet over, and what that's doing is that's allowing you to have a grip so that if one of these gives loose, you then still have the other grips. This is the idea in the Bible where it talks about comparing Scripture with Scripture. And, in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, let every word be established. You've got to be so careful that you don't just grab the one thing and go, well, this verse says it just like, no. Compare Scripture with Scripture. So when Solomon, like I said, says things like, yeah, we all know that we just all go into the dust, that's not his point, and we can tell from other scriptures that that's not just what happens. Solomon's not saying that either. He's just saying, from just an earthly perspective, we all just die, and there really is no difference between us and animals. So just understand, going into it as you try to study this book of Ecclesiastes, Solomon is making some outrageous statements that we have all thought at one point or another, because he's being very real. It honestly is one of the most real books that you look at and you're like, yeah, it just makes sense. So again, keep multiple points of contact, compare Scripture with Scripture, and again, understand that this is and has always been considered canon, but we've got to compare it and say, all right, what was the point he was trying to make? We're going to get into that in actually the first lesson. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about the concept of, do we take the Bible literally, and what does that mean? Guys, if you like this content, and if you're going to be joining me for the summer, please like, subscribe, share this content. Leave a comment below. It really helps me out and helps spread this content around. If you know someone who would be helped by a study through the book of Ecclesiastes, please share this with them. We're going to spend about the first half covering how we know this stuff, and the last half going verse by verse through the book. So join us for the summer, and I will catch you guys later.